I would say, very important work Baba did during this period. Of course, during Baba's health was deteriorating very fast. Baba used to bow down to thousands of saints and Mahatmas during Kumbh Mela and mosques also. With that, his neck was affected so much that it was causing a lot of pain. And Dr. Ginde, the very famous neurologist from Bombay, used to give treatment Baba. He would practically visit Baba every week and try different remedies on him, and they would not have any effect. He would come, he would apply some medicine, Baba says, oh, I'm feeling a little relief. He will go back and Baba will send message, the pain has come back again. So he didn't know what to do. When he told Gohar, whatever knowledge I have, I'm using to treat Baba. But Baba told him, don't worry. This is all divine thing. You may do whatever you want to do, but whatever happen will happen according to my will. So this happened. So this was Baba's cause maybe there. So this is the brief, I would say. We are going to hear later on in more detail about all these things what I said. So I would request you to enjoy this. But I would like to read one more message which Baba gave in December 1966 and which was published by Mani in her family letters. Baba says, I think, end of this period, this Baba's message is there. And very interesting message. Desires and longings are the root cause of all suffering. The only real desire is to see God. And the only real longing is to become one with God. This real desire and longing frees one from the bondage of birth and death. Other desires and longings bind one with ignorance. To desire the real desire and to long for the real longing, you need my grace. And you cannot have that grace until you surrender all other desires and longings to me. Your love to me will help you to surrender the desires and longings, and my love to you will help you to desire the real desire and long for the real longing which are by my grace. So I pray to beloved Baba to bestow his grace on us, and we give us the, I would say, courage, I would say. It is not easy to surrender to Baba. Surrendering very difficult. We all say, Baba, we are prepared. Like, there is one instance, during one of the darshan programs, one person came to Baba and Baba, he said, Baba, I want to surrender to you and I will stay with you. Baba said, okay, wonderful. So tell me about your background. So he says, I have got myself, my wife, 3 children. So Baba said, you are going to all bring this to me. So by surrendering to me, you are putting the responsibility on my head. So Baba does not that sort of surrender. He wants real surrender by loving him. And we should all love him in the true sense of love. And he will give, his grace will be always be there. So enjoy the program for the next 2 days. And I would say, request people to come here in more numbers so Mr. Gokan will feel happy about it, and Mr. Baba also feel happy. Jai Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. So, first of all, this is our duty to thank Shri Sridhar Kelkar ji. Now, Jal Bhai is here, so I would request him to kindly come in the front on the wheelchair and say something. Probably he is not inside, so we will go to the next. But before doing so, we should thank Sri Sridhar Kelkarji for this wonderful presentation which he gave about this particular program. And especially he prepared all those things very nicely and deeply. So we are grateful to him. And the formality of welcoming you could not be done, so let us postpone it when Jal Uncle comes, and we will have that again. So the next presentation is about the treasure. The title of this program has been from the beginning, Discovering the Avataric Treasure. So now we are trying to reflect back on that particular thing, and the presentation here is the hidden treasure discovered from Avataric Treasure Trove. This is the library presentation for 15th Annual Legacy Program. For the last 14 years, this program is organized to discover the Avataric treasure, and it took 15 years to finally get to the divine treasure that beloved Baba has kept for us in his treasure trove. The treasure is also coming to us with beloved Baba's blessings, so please collect your share and preserve it for eternity. Jai Meher Baba. The hidden treasure of the self. There is not a creature destined for the supreme goal, even as there is not a river on its winding way to the ocean. But in the human form alone is consciousness so developed that it is capable of reflecting and expressing the glory and perfection of his own true and highest self, which at the same time the self of all. Man is kept away from inheriting the hidden treasure of ineffable fulfillment and plenitude by his own self, accumulated and sanskaric ignorance. Sanskaras are the inevitable deposits left by the arduous evolutionary descent into the human form and human consciousness. They are like the dust that gathers on the pilgrims as he treads his path. In the human form, which is the highest, the divine life is still enmeshed in these sanskaric deposits in the mind. Its expression is therefore necessarily curtailed and distorted through the diverse and distracting moments of the sanskaras, which keep consciousness pinned down to the enticing panorama of that which is false and phenomenal. One by one, the multicolored attachments to the false have to be relinquished, and one by one, the sanskaric faggots that feed the deceptive fires of the separative ego have to be surrendered in favor of the imperative claims of the invincible flame of the truth. Thus can man ascend to the pinnacle of divine attainment, which is endless, which is the endless beginning of the life eternal. The life in eternity knows no bondage, decay, or sorrow, and it is the everlasting and ever-renewing self-affirmation of conscious and illimitable divinity. The clouds of sanskaras have to disappear completely before the sky of consciousness is illumined by the inextinguishable light of God, who is the real self of all. My mission is to help you inherit this hidden treasure of self, and all who eternally seek it have my blessings, Meher Baba. Once somebody asked a very funny question in the Mandli hall. Baba, if God is everywhere and everyone, then who is that sitting in that chair? Pointing to Baba. Baba replied, God in human form, God is everywhere indeed. But can you see Him in everything? Can you feel Him in everything you meet? You certainly do not. So I, God, have assumed this form of man to tell you and awaken you all to the effect that God is everywhere, in everyone, and in everything. I am the God-man. Once a while, God takes birth because of His love for His creation. I am born in human form so that you may see me as you are. And if you are fortunate to know me and love me, then someday you will see me as I really am. Meher Baba. And this is, we are talking about discovering the Avataric treasure. So there's one result of that discovery. It is how that someone discovers a treasure through beloved Baba's work. Story of Pete Townshend. We toured America again, and at the end of February by bus. In my notebook, I wrote my first plan for what would become Tommy. Our first show were in California, and I went a few days early to meet Rick Chapman, who ran Meher Baba Information out of Berkeley. He drove me to our first show in San Jose in his massive old 1959 Lincoln Continental. En route, he explained that Meher Baba had counted marijuana among those drugs he wished sincere followers to stop abusing. So I began to wean myself of it. In California, I met a whole group of Meher Baba lovers from the Bay Area through my friend Rick Chapman. I was stunned at how many there were. They weren't brainwashed, nor obviously religious in any way. They had lived hard, done drugs, had lots of sex, and decided to hunker down to follow Meher Baba. They were a mixed bunch of eccentrics, which I regarded as a positive and also very real. The more of his adherent I met, and the more I learned about Meher Baba, the more convinced I became that I had found a genuine master. So this is how we make some discoveries out of his love. And this was our approach for all these 15 years. But we had never any opportunity to actually talk about what we have discovered. We would be deliberating upon different aspects of Baba's life. So this is now at the end of the program, one more year is there. So we are now discovering something. And in this particular program also we have some plan for a discussion. We will be inviting all of people from this audience to share what they have discovered through these programs. So that will be a panel discussion tomorrow in the afternoon. So with this now, we move to next one, and here is the summary of these particular 3 days of Baba's life and work. And after that, our first speaker of this morning would be there. And the best thing would be there that whosoever comes to deliver a presentation, share a presentation, he is requested to kindly introduce himself, because it is a difficult job on our part to introduce the person concerned. So I would request that whosoever comes on the podium, please introduce yourself to the audience. With this, we move to the next one, and that is the summary of these 3 years by Jeffrey. Patrick, please. And this is my greatest fortune. You can see, for last 2-3 years, I am observing that Sridhar Kelkar always, when he sits back, he is prompted to say something. And so he is again here.
I'm sorry.
To say something.
In spite of having the notes before me, many times I omit something which is very interesting. So one interesting thing that happened during this time, I forgot to mention. Once one more center was opened on 25th November 1963 at Navaranga in Hamirpur district. And Baba had sent Sarosh Irani and his wife Villu as the representatives to open this center. Now, Hamirpur district, if you see the people, at least in those days I would say, they were very poor people, very simple, very innocent I would say. And they did not have our city folks' mannerisms. So Baba told Vilu that when you go there, do not pay any attention to the poverty, uncleanliness, illiteracy, and manners of the poor villagers, but see only the richness of their love. This is what Baba told Vilu. And Vilu was a little sophisticated woman, so she was wondering, and Baba ostensibly told Vilu that I am sending you to take care of Sarosh. So accompany him, and she had to go. Now, Vilu, though used to go to Baba quite often with Sarosh, she did not believe him to be avatar. She always used to think how a human being can be avatar. She is Zoroastrian. She is, except Zoroastrian, there was nobody avatar. But still, because of Sarosh, she would go pay respect to Baba, everything she would do. Now, when she goes to Navaranga, after the program is over, the huge line of people, men and women, wanting to embrace Vilu and Sarosh. And she had willy-nilly to agree with that. She had to embrace each and everybody. It took about more than an hour to finish the line. And Vilu was so overcome, seeing their love for Baba. So much so, when she came back, Baba asked her, how was your trip to Navaranga? Did you enjoy? She said, Baba, while going back there, it was everything all right. On the way back, we had a lot of problems. There was the rains, the car broke down, we did not find good accommodation. But you sent us there, so you sent us in comfort. But you when you came back, you made us suffer all these inconveniences. Baba said, it doesn't matter. But how did you feel there? Baba said, he says, Vilu says, Baba, now I believe you are the avatar. After seeing their love for you, I can definitely see nobody else can create this sort of love. So this is what happened in Jalpaiguri, and very important for us to know that how Baba wanted to love. He did not wanted gifts, did not want anything. He said, just love me simply and remember me always in your heart. That is what we should do. You see, that's what all this program we are having, the Avataric treasure, finally that this treasure trove of his love is there, that's all. And this is unlimited treasure trove. It is for us to take as much as we can. Jai Baba. It's a good thing I forgot my shoes here, so I had to come pick up my shoes also. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Patrick, please have the next one.
The Cuban Missile Crisis took place, which could have resulted in a devastating nuclear conflict. At the same time, India came very close to a war with China. Baba has stated that he does not involve himself in politics. However, during this time, the Avatar's role as the eternal preserver made a great impression on some Indian officials who were very much involved with the conflict on the border with China. Meher Baba's work with his centers. Baba gave much attention to the establishment of his centers, giving guidance as needed. Kaduri Krishna Rao established Meherstone, House of Meher, in 1963 on the banks of the Godavari River in Kovar, Andhra Pradesh, where Baba gave darshan in 1954. And here we see Meherstone in February 1963. For the opening ceremony of Meherstone, the Avatar declared, 1. Tear away the curtain of set ceremonies and rituals, and you will find that I am the worshipped, and the worshipper. 2. To clothe simple worship with garments of ceremony and rituals is to expose me to the cold winds of ignorance. 3. To love faithfully the God-man is to worship God truly. 4. To find me here in Meherstone, search the depth of your heart. 5. Meherstone is built for me with love, but I may only be found here by my lover who brings me here in his heart. 6. As the heart is, so is the house. As the eye is, so is the image within the house. 7. The heart of man has always been the ancient temple for the worship of the Ancient One. 8. Nothing can house the Ancient One that does not house love. Furthermore, the Avatar stated, any lover of Baba who enters Meherstone is in himself the pujari, priest of Baba. Every lover should have full freedom of expression of love for Baba, according to the dictates of his or her heart. Anyone should have a free access to Baba in Meherstone and be allowed full freedom of expression of love for Baba, without any reservations of caste or creed or race. There can be no better form of worship in Meherstone than repeating Baba's name and singing in his praise. And those who cannot sing can read, recall, and repeat Baba's messages and discourses, can recite the Master's prayer of Parvardigar and the prayer of repentance. Baba's divine gain was to remove the artificial layer of ceremonies and rituals. He used Meherstone for his archetypal work, thus remaining free of dogma. The Divine Beloved showed the way for humanity to offer love more sincerely and free of pretense, allowing each lover of the Avatar of the age to be with their beloved on their own terms. This was also applied to other centers in India. Pictured here, left to right, is Ramalingeshwar Rao, Kaduri Krishna Rao, unknown, Baba's shadow, Baba and B. Papi Raju. Avatnagar Center. On 17th March 1963, Meher Baba gave a darshan at the Avatar Meher Baba Center in Avatnagar to a full house of Baba's lovers and families, some of whom had to be standing outside the hall. And here we see Meher Baba with Adi K. Irani and Francis Brabazon seated in the background. The Divine Beloved gave the following message. When one becomes God, then every other thing vanishes. Mind, body, intellect, the world and its affairs, etc. Then the realized one knows anything and everything through experiencing the I am God state and claims, I am God with authority. This state can never be achieved through an intellectual understanding of Vedanta. The state of the God-realized man is indescribable. It must be experienced. After realization, there is only one in millions who regains normal gross consciousness and he spontaneously experiences his divine state side by side with the awareness of the gross world. Such a one alone is real, and no amount of Vedanta reading can give this experience. On the spiritual path, one must have 100% honesty. The slightest tinge of hypocrisy leads one away from God. It is better to be an unbeliever, atheist, agnostic, than to be a hypocrite or false saint. And it is better to deny God than to defy him. God is nearer to you than your own breath, but at the same time he seems so far away from you. I know by actual experience that I am God, and that you all are God. This, my experience, is a continuous experience without a break. You do not have this experience because there is a veil between you and God, which separates you from God, and prevents you from knowing him. And this veil of separateness is you yourself. This makes it so difficult and impossible for anyone to know God. Baba concluded, only the grace of a perfect master can make you experience the God state in the flesh. After he makes you drink the wine of his divine love, and when you have imbibed that wine, you lose all consciousness of all your worldly attachments and gain the consciousness of God, who is the only reality. That state is beyond description. Until you drink that cup of wine of divine love, your mind plays tricks with you. Your desires fill and dirty your heart. They prevent your heart from being cleansed, and you cannot see God. Once the desires are swept away, your heart becomes pure, and you see God. But this needs the grace of the perfect master. Baba gesturing as Erich interprets. Guruprasad was where Baba spent the hot summer months in Pune. In March 1963, after spelling out the weaknesses of the avatars in his previous advents, Baba shared a weakness of this advent. As Meher Baba the Avatar, I have two weaknesses. One weakness is that I am Bola, innocent, guileless. That is, I keep company with all my lovers, allow them to say what they like. The second weakness I will tell you when I come again, after 700 years, during my next advent. In June 1964, the Divine Beloved told his close American lover, Harry Kenmore, about his suffering. I carry the universal burden, and I suffer physically, mentally, and spiritually. My physical suffering is seen by those around me. My mental suffering is intense, infinite. As for my spiritual suffering, it is ad infinitum. Baba and Harry Kenmore at Guruprasad. In March 1965, Meher Baba's secretary Adi K. Irani sent out the following circular to Baba centers in India. Avatar Meher Baba directs me to let all his Eastern lovers know that he will give darshan in Pune for only 6 days from 1st May to 6th May 1965, despite his very weak health. Meher Baba says that his universal work has increased manyfold, and his universal suffering has also increased proportionately, and this is now telling greatly upon his physical health. Thousands of Meher Baba's lovers came from Andhra, Hamirpur, Bombay, and other parts of India. A few people from the West were also given the opportunity to take part in the darshan. Meherabad was very much the Divine Beloved's home in these years. Erich observed, after the accident in America, Baba was more exacting. You had to be more on your toes. Mani also noted Baba being sympathetic. Just when you're feeling so exasperated, Baba would say, it's not your fault for feeling the way you do. How hard I drive you. Who would put up with it? You don't go to the movies. You don't mingle with the opposite sex. What kind of life you lead? Anyone would feel fed up. At the center of Meher Baba's circle was Mehera Irani. As Alu saw it, Baba did not want Mehera to be in any way upset. He did not wish her to suffer physically or mentally in any way. He was connected with his work, so his work would go smoothly. That is, he stressed everyone should try to please her. Baba made it known. You are upsetting my universal work by displeasing Mehera. Her heart and mine are the same, so don't disturb her. Please her as far as possible, the same way you would please me. Mehera offered the following insight. The more we see Baba withdrawing from outward activity, the more Baba activity is evident wherever we turn. The more the veil of seclusion hides him from the eyes of his lovers, the more he is revealed in the hearts of those unaware of him previously. This chain reaction of love is really reaching critical mass. Baba and Mehera, Guruprasad, May 1963. In January 1964, Meher Baba gave this message for the weekly Hindi publication Guide, printed in Raipur. Throughout the ages, men have been deeply involved in the struggle for peace and happiness. It is this struggle that lands them into chaos and misery. If men were only to become conscious of the fact that peace and happiness are not to be fought for, but to be sought for within oneself, they would abandon their fighting and be at peace with themselves and the world. I have come not to teach but to awaken men to that peace and happiness which cannot be obtained through struggle. Neither can it be bargained for, nor borrowed, nor bestowed, because it is inherent in all. Meher Baba at the Pune Center, 1964. The Avatar meets with individuals. During the Divine Beloved's seclusion, he made special allowances to meet with certain people that came to India. As it turned out, many of these same people became key players in Baba's own anti-drug campaign that was carried out in the West. One exception was Meher Baba's meeting with Lynn and Phyllis Ott in the United States. Phyllis met Baba originally in December 1964. Baba asked that she bring her husband Lynn, who was a painter, and whose eyesight was fading. Lynn's paintings of Baba can be seen in Lower Meherabad. The couple came to Meherabad and met with Baba in Mandali Hall. Lynn described their meeting. It was time to go into Mandali Hall to meet the Messiah, author of myself, the indwelling essence of everything and nothing in human form. Believe it or not, God himself, and my thinking stopped. As I stepped out of my sandals and across the threshold into Baba's presence, the terror left as if it were stuck to the sandals rather than to me. As I stepped into that room, everything stopped. Everything set my feet, which carried me straight, without faltering, into the waiting arms of the Divine Beloved. The first thing Baba expressed was, "Can you see my face?" I felt as if he went inside me, all the way back to the very roots of my eyesight, and turned around and took a look at himself through my eyes. I replied in a whisper, "Not very well, Baba." In my reply, there was something apologetic, something of disappointment, and not being able to give Baba the happiness of my seeing his face. I think this disappointment, shared by Baba and me, was the closest point that I've ever come to the point of real surrender. For looking back now, I see that at that moment, I realized that I had no real hope and that I was completely and utterly helpless in the hands of God. And here we see Len Ott with his beloved. Here's a picture of Baba taken by his brother, Baron, which was given to the Ott family. One man who became involved with Meher Baba's anti-drug campaign in the West was Robert Dreyfus. He was already planning a trip to India when he heard of Baba at Harvard University near Boston, Massachusetts. Dreyfus came overland to India hoping to attend the 1965 Darshan program, which was canceled. This news did not reach Dreyfus, and when he arrived in Meherabad, he was given a meeting with Meher Baba, and he was questioned by the Mandali about this new drug in the West, LSD. Robert replied that he had tried the drug, and that he and his friends referred to LSD as reality capsules. This was met with much laughter by the Mandali, remarking, "Only in the West." Robert described his meeting with the Avatar. Suddenly, there he was, sitting on his bed, unclothed from the waist up, beaming, the Emperor of Emperors. What occurred then I shall never forget. A great loosening, a shaking from within. I am not given to visions or seeing things or hallucinations. But on beholding his form, what I saw was his resplendent face at the center of an effulgence so brilliant, of a light so complete in its all-encompassing radiance that tears blurred my vision in rivers of delight. There was no way I could stop it. The light was so brilliant, it was like looking into the sun, and so tears naturally had to flow. Here he was, the one who in his compassion had granted the speck of his imagination a glimpse of the sun. After receiving a very generous darshan from the beloved, Baba smiled and asked Robert, "Is there anything you want?" "Yes, Baba. I want to love you as you should be loved. I want to see and love you in everyone and everything, always for the sake of others." And here we see Robert Dreyfus. To which Baba replied, "If you want this prem, love that you desire, for the service of others, you must obey me and do exactly what I tell you to do. Will you be able to do this? It takes great daring to obey me. Be brave. Do not be afraid. I am with you. I am God in human form. Bear with humiliation. Whether humiliation or reward, praise, dedicate all to my feet. Whatever thoughts, good or bad, come into your head, offer them at my feet. Do not worry about them." Baba concluded, "I want you to remember that the world and its affairs are a big zero, a nothing into nothing. God alone is real, and undoubtedly God exists. I am God. I am God in human form and God the beyond. I experience my being infinite continuously without a break. I suffer infinitely. I have the burden of the whole universe on my head. I am the highest, yet I come down to the lowest, and I see to minute details." Robert was ordered to stop taking LSD, and after returning to the West, he became part of a group known as Baba's Boston Boys, who were involved in Mayor Baba's anti-drug campaign by giving talks on college campuses and starting projects in Mayor Baba's name. In December 1966, our beloved gave this message: "Desires and longings are the root cause of all suffering. The only real desire is to see God, and the only real longing is to become one with God. This real desire and longing frees one from the bondage of birth and death. Other desires and longings bind one with ignorance. To desire the real desire and to long for the real longing, you need my grace. And you cannot have that until you surrender all other desires and longings to me. Your love for me will help you to surrender these desires and longings, and my love for you will help you to desire the real desire and long for the real longing, which are by my grace. He who seeks my pleasure finds the divine treasure." Thank you to Bal Kachuri for writing Lord Mayor, Ferrum Working Boxwala for translation from the original Hindi, Lawrence Ryder and David Fenster for editing and compiling the text, David Fenster for writing Meher and for his website lordmayor.org. Images courtesy of Avatar Mayor Baba Perpetual Public Trust, David Fenster's website mnpublications.zenfolio.com, and Anthony Zois's website at www.mayorbabatravels.com. Jai Baba, everyone.
So Jeffrey is not present here, but we are grateful to him for making this very nice presentation, the summary of those 3 years. Now the next presentation is by Warren Wallace from USA, and the title is Aiding Baba's Anti-Drug Apostles, the Role of Murshida Ivy Dews. So she helped in this particular campaign for which Baba sent some Baba lovers to USA. And Warren Wallace is invited to share his presentation. Please, Warren, please.
Jai Baba. First off, I want to say thank you for everyone who has welcomed us here and for everybody for being here and all of the amazing work in honor of Baba. So my name is Warren Wallace. It is my privilege to represent Sufism in America on behalf of Murshid Walker Lambert. And our program is called Aiding Baba's Anti-Drug Apostles, the role of Murshida Ivy Dews. In the mid-1960s, Meherabad went into deeper and deeper seclusion for crucial stages of his universal work. And yet, at the same time, Baba did something remarkable, perhaps unique in the advent of the history of the Avatar's advent. He intervened directly in a social movement halfway around the world. At that time, a drug culture was sweeping through the youth of America and in many parts of Europe. It was powered by the widespread use of mind-altering substances like LSD and marijuana, or ganja, which brought about unusual mental experiences and delusions of expanded consciousness. Generally, Meher Baba did not issue public statements about topical social issues, other than to give specific guidance to individuals about personal situations. However, when psychedelic drugs, such as LSD, emerged. When these drugs were presented as helpful spiritually, and when the use of these drugs began to spread rapidly among young people in the West, then Meher Baba took action and intervened. He emphasized the urgency of the problem in a 1966 letter to Murshida Ivy Deuce in California, with this stark warning. If the student world continues to indulge in the use of LSD, half of the USA would soon become mentally deranged. Most social historians of this period recognize that Meher Baba's warning was not an overstatement. They also recognize that within a few years of Meher Baba's campaign, the use of psychedelic drugs in America declined significantly. Though this problem has certainly not gone away, we now have a much better understanding of the dangers and limitations of these drugs. Meher Baba's focus on this issue played a central role in bringing about this change. From his seclusion in India, working with a very small group of dedicated followers in the West, in a very short time, Meher Baba was able to reach a worldwide audience with his warning about the dangers of mind-altering drugs. It was a very rare and extraordinary instance in which Meher Baba's statements had direct and immediate social consequences. Many facets of this story are well known to Baba's devotees through books, articles, and recorded talks by central figures in this work, such as Dr. Alan Cohen, Rick Chapman, who was just mentioned in the most recent presentation, and Robert Dreyfus, who was mentioned as well. Baba named these three young men Baba's apostles. As apostles, in this work, the word apostle comes from the Greek word for one who is sent, or an emissary. It is most closely associated with the work of Jesus, meaning someone sent by the Christ to spread his teaching. These Baba boys, as Baba the Beloved called them, and the men and women of all ages and backgrounds who would join them in these years, were to serve literally as the God-man's messengers in the world. This was no easy task. Fortunately, Meher Baba arranged for them to have help and guidance from one of his close ones in America, Ivy Onita Deuce. Born in 1895, a year to the day after Meher Baba, Ivy Deuce first met Baba in 1948. Baba appointed her to be the Murshida, or teacher, of the spiritual school he chartered, which he named Sufism Reoriented. Baba had chosen Ivy Deuce and her associates, Don Stevens, to edit and publish his most important book, God Speaks. Like many of the Western women in Baba's close circles, Murshida Deuce had a wide-ranging professional background, with experience in law, banking, and publishing. She also had a practical knowledge of national politics, and even global diplomacy in her role as a wife of a prominent international oil executive. In this presentation, we will see how, at Baba's direction, Murshida Deuce lent her experience and understanding of to the work of Alan Cohen and others to stop the spread of drug use in the 1960s and 1970s. In the fall of 1964, Murshid Adus began having very close contacts with young people, mostly of college age, who were taking drugs such as LSD, many of them in the hope of expanding their consciousness. In her book, How a Master Works, published in 1975, she writes, "It brought home to me how numberless young people were disillusioned and unhappy. Many of them were seeking to escape the realities of life, while others were trying desperately to discover whether God really existed and how to find him." In 1965 and 1966, this is her quote, Baba sent a series of letters between him and some young graduate students at Harvard University who were on drugs. It introduced to me a whole new subject about which it was apparent that I would have to become informed and educated. One of these graduate students from Harvard was Alan Cohen, who first met Murshid Adus in San Francisco in the spring of 1965. A year later, in April of 1966, Murshid sent Baba an alarming New York Times article about the increasing use of drugs on college campuses in America. Baba responded quickly. He sent Murshid a detailed letter through his secretary, Adi K. Irani, outlining what he wanted his apostles to do. They were to give lectures at colleges and universities, write newspaper and magazine articles, and appear on radio and TV shows, all to spread Baba's message about the dangers of drugs. They were to present information specifically from Baba's messages, discourses, and books. The letters said, quote, "Baba says this is the best opportunity for Baba boys to do his work in the States and, at the same time, to be of help to their fellow beings in America." And in closing, Baba said to Murshid Adus, quote, "Dear Ivy, it is expedient that these boys of Baba follow in right earnest Baba's wishes and do their best to bring home his message to the benefit of all concerned." Baba sent copies of this letter to his 3 apostles in America. When Alan Cohen received his copy of these instructions in the mail, he quickly phoned Murshid Adus for help. In 1966, he and the other apostles were recent college graduates in their mid-20s. In his view, they were not public figures. They had no experience giving speeches or interviews. Who would pay attention to them? How could they possibly succeed? After talking with Alan at length on the phone about this, Murshid Adus wrote a letter to the 3 apostles. Alan would later say that what she said in this letter became the foundation of his work. Here's a video clip of Alan at a program in 2001, reading from Murshid's 1966 letter.
While talking on the phone with Ellen the other night, he seemed to feel that she had all covered whatever field he could count on, and he remarked that she would not stand anywhere to audiences when he tried to do talks. This is because Alan has not yet experienced what happens when one serves not only the perfect master of theology,
Meherabad's words carried the authority of nearly 20 years of experience serving the Avatar. Her advice and counsel helped open the door for Alan and his fellow apostles to begin to collaborate with Meher Baba, to inform American youth of the dangers of recreational drugs, and to publicize Baba's timeless message. Following this guidance, Alan learned to respond with energy and dedication to the requirements of whatever situation Baba placed him in, however surprising they might seem on the surface. He acquired the ability to remain undaunted in the face of apparent failures and even humiliation. He learned to be attentive to Baba's guidance and wait patiently with a keen sense of privilege for his call. And especially, he learned to recognize and take delight in the creative and whimsical ways in which God works his will in the world, often in situations that appear to ordinary reason to be utterly lacking in a single ray of hope or promise. Alan later said that Meherabad's advice was proven over and over again. In the next 2 years, he gave more than 500 public lectures. He appeared on almost every major national radio and TV talk show in America. Articles and letters by him and other Baba apostles were published in major magazines across the country. He was even invited to England, where he spoke at Oxford and other places, and then gave talks in several European nations. One event led to another, and Alan had no idea how it happened. But of course, he and the other apostles did know. As Meherabad noted in her journal at the time, quote, "The master put his will behind them, using me as a sort of central bureau for their work, and they got into magazines, papers, TV, and radio. It was fantastic. And the message spread." Sufism Reoriented at that time was based in the city of San Francisco, which Baba had visited for 4 days during his Sahavas tour of America in 1956. A decade later, San Francisco had become ground zero for the drug culture of the late 1960s. Thousands of what were called flower children from all over America came to San Francisco in search of peace and love. The city's spacious Golden Gate Park became a central rallying ground for these crowds of young people who called themselves hippies. Wherever they gathered, drugs flowed freely. Meher Baba now directed Meherabad to publish his statements on drugs. He wanted them to be distributed widely. Meherabad quickly arranged to have cards, flyers, and pamphlets with Baba's picture, his name, and his message printed and sent out to Baba groups around the country. In San Francisco, Baba volunteers spent hour after hour, week after week, handing out these cards at the entrance to Golden Gate Park, as well as at the University of California campus across the bay in Berkeley, at rock concerts and at public gatherings, giving Baba's messages to anyone who would take them. Most memorable was a small pink card with the heading LSD or love. Sometimes these little cards would spark a conversation. Sometimes they would be ripped up and thrown away. More often, they would be stared at for a long time and then put in a pocket or purse. Years later, one might meet someone for whom that card had been a lifeline. During these years, Dozens of Baba's lovers participated in similar scenes in major cities across America. Quietly yet quickly, Meher Baba's message spread and took root. Perhaps the most important of these materials Murshid Adus created and published was a small 10-page pamphlet called God in a Pill, Meher Baba on LSD and the High Roads. It had as its epigraph a line from a poem of Hafiz. Alas, alas, I pity those who compare a glass bead to a pearl. And on the back cover, Baba's statement, if God can be found through the medium of any drug, God is not worthy of being God. In just 7 pages, God in a Pill gathered and summarized Baba's essential messages on LSD, other drugs, and spirituality, messages given to many different people over several years. Then in 3 more pages, key passages from God Speaks, Baba's discourses, and Listen Humanity outline clearly, in Baba's own words, the safe path leading to enduring experience of the self. There's an amusing story about the first printing of God in a Pill in 1966. When it was completed, it was discovered that a paragraph had been left out. An important paragraph, indeed, the only paragraph in the entire booklet that mentioned marijuana. Murshid Adus sent out an emergency call to those of her students who had previously used marijuana to come to the Sufi Center at an appointed time for an important meeting. When they arrived, they found stacks of pamphlets and equal stacks of paper with the missing paragraph typed out on it in such a way that it just fit at the bottom of page 6, where it belonged. Pots of glue were passed around, and Murshida invited her students to carefully glue the insert on page 6 of every booklet. The paragraph says, Baba is emphatically against the use of LSD and ganja, juice from dried flowering tops of the cultivated hemp plant, which become coated with a resinous exudation, and such like drugs and smokes, marijuana and hashish. Meher Baba made it very clear that it was impossible to pursue lasting spiritual transformation through chemical stimulation. He emphasized that chemically addictive states deaden the natural or mystical experiences of love, beauty, and unity. Inevitably, all of the energy of one's life is drawn into maintaining the addiction until one is resolved to become free. Then one must use all of one's energy of life to break the addiction. Until that task is accomplished and one is completely free, other goals in life must wait. As long as one was psychologically and physiologically dependent on any of these substances, Meher Baba said, one would not be able to profit from spiritual participation and study. For such reasons, Meher Baba made it a requirement for those who joined Sufism Reoriented, for example, to abstain completely from all such mind-altering substances, unless administered for medical reasons. He recommended that anyone interested in Sufism Reoriented be free from the use of any of these substances for at least 2 years before joining the group. Murshid Adus spoke of these issues in a radio interview she gave by phone in 1977. She said,
so many young people have retreated from life through drugs, alcohol, because they've not been shown alternatives to these escape methods. And when the young, disillusioned devotees of Timothy Leary began coming to me back in the early 60s, I explained to them that after the use of hard drugs or psychedelics, it takes 4 years to begin to think clearly again. I know that from those that I handled. And 7 full years to get the drugs completely out of the body. They ruin the liver and also the sheaths of the nerve fibers in the brain. And I tried to get them to see that every living creature has a purpose in life, and that we have many lifetimes in which to develop our potentials.
I will read her quote in case you couldn't understand from the audio. Mershida Deuce said, "So many young people have retreated from life through drugs and alcohol because they've not been shown alternatives to these escape methods. When the young, disillusioned devotees of Timothy Leary began coming to me back in the early 1960s, I explained to them that after the use of hard drugs or psychedelics, it takes 4 years to begin to think clearly again. I know that from those that I handled, and 7 full years to get the drugs completely out of the body. They ruin the liver and also the sheaths of the nerve fibers in the brain. I tried to get them to see that every living creature has a purpose in life, and that we have many lifetimes in which to develop our potentials." When Baba's anti-drug campaign began in the mid-1960s, Mershida Deuce was in her early 70s, as was Meher Baba. Her sudden new divine assignment as a drug counselor to young people astonished her. Alan Cohen's former professor at Harvard was Richard Alpert, later known as Ram Dass. He had corresponded with Baba about drugs and mentioned God Speaks in his books and lectures. This brought more people to the Sufi Center in San Francisco with questions. In her 1967 journal, Mershida wrote, "The next thing I knew, I was knee-deep in young people. To my astonishment, I found that a lot of them had college degrees and were searching for a purpose in life. It finally dawned on me that they must be Baba's new humanity, who still did not know what they were doing in what seemed an alien world to them, as his time has not yet come, and they had not found their niche. I finally got them to cut their hair, clean up, have some pride, and go back to school if needed, and get on the beam. The results have been staggering. One of my old friends from the East Coast said to me that she thought it was an extraordinary way for me to spend my old age, trying to handle drug addicts and confused youth. I told her, I feel that the real phenomenon is that so many of them come and listen to me, which of course is all the master's doing. Naturally, it was quite a shock for the young people to be faced by a woman of vintage years who obviously could know nothing of their problems. They would ask quite belligerently whether I had ever taken drugs. Their criterion was that if I had not taken them, I could not possibly evaluate them. My standard answer was that a doctor did not have to have a baby to know what the mother was going through in childbirth. Mershida continues, "Many accepted Baba and his teachings as an alternative to drugs, so we began to attract a whole new field of young people who turned out to be extraordinarily intelligent and creative once the miasma of the drugs began to wear off." For Mershida Deuce, this brought to mind a moment 14 years earlier during the 1952 American Sahavas, when Baba had given darshan to his lovers at her apartment in New York. She recalled, quote, "Baba had told me that one day thousands would be coming to me. Well, they have started, but whoever would have dreamed that it would all come about through the current craze spreading all over the world for taking LSD and other drugs and youngsters smoking marijuana. From the mid-1960s to the early 1970s, over 200 of those who came to Murshid Adus's door renounced drugs and became members of Baba's Sufism Reoriented. Nearly all of them were former dropouts, hippies, or whatever, all of them who had found the beloved they were really seeking. Many of them accompanied Murshid Adus to Baba's great darshan at Guruprasad in the spring of 1969 to keep their destined appointment with God, as did dozens of other young people from America, Europe, and Australia who had found their way from LSD to love. Baba had said that this darshan would be only for his lovers, and so it was. Meher Baba had begun his anti-drug campaign in America in the 1960s with just 3 apostles and 1 Sufi Murshida. It quickly grew to include hundreds of his lovers, old and new, in all parts of the world. The crucial importance Baba placed on this work during his lifetime was reflected by the fact that even as his last seclusion grew deeper and deeper, requiring him to cut off nearly all correspondence, he continued to accept and respond to messages about the drug work, right up to the end. Baba had indicated that any assistance to others protecting against drug dependency was among the highest forms of selfless service. And this work continues to this day. Jai Baba.
Would you want to say something? Come here. Just wait.
Jai Baba.
Did Baba advise Ellen Cohen or any of these apostles to read God Speaks for 3 times or more times, or to beware of the drug?
I'm not an expert on that part of it, but I have heard that they were told to read God Speaks at least 3 times. I think some of them read it a lot more than that.
So God Speak has that power to the side effects of long-term drug addiction. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Any more questions, please, if you have some questions?
Jai Baba, Brother
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now we are breaking for tea for 15 minutes, and after that we have Ward Parks, and he will be deliberating upon Meher Baba's directive to Francis Brabazon for a new edition of God Speaks. So after tea, please assemble here, and this is very important message from this new edition of God Speaks. So please break for the tea, 15 minutes, and we reassemble here for the next presentation from Ward Parks. And to assist him, there's David Bowling is there. So he will be assisting Ward Parks in this presentation. Thank you, sir.